here? Why do you have to raise these awkward questions? And I said, well, because I'm a director of this club, and if it were my own company, I would be held to task for paying too much money for wine. So that's why I want to know. I would fire a director if they weren't doing this for me on my company. That's why I want to know. And if you want to be a fellow director, you should be feel it's just as important. So I was a bit of a pain in the neck, but I think I really achieved some important things. And I think it also raised the visibility of women, because now I was one of 3 women at that stage. Now they have 10 women, and they've all got children. I was the only one who had a job. The others were all landed gentry, and I was the only one who had children. So I was the only voice on the committee, and now they have 12 women there because they found out that women really did make a difference. So, and then self-belief. You're very welcome to come and sit on the floor anyway. It's quite a comfy carpet, but make yourself comfy. Yes, we have 2 more chairs over here. And then self-belief is very easy when you go through a difficult time to have a sense of self-belief, unless you're continuously restoring it. And something happened to me which was very important. I became pregnant on purpose. I claim the honor of that. But I also, in those days, well, I went to the doctor and she said, yes, Mrs. Mortimer, you're pregnant. And so, Mrs. Mortimer, how much wine do you drink a day? And I said, well, you know, a glass or so. You're pregnant, Mrs. Mortimer, you don't drink wine. And I just said, I'm pregnant and I don't drink wine. And what about cigarettes, Mrs. Mortimer? How many cigarettes do you smoke a day? And I said, well, you know, I light up about 10 or 11 or, okay, honestly, 20 during the week, nothing at the weekend. And she said, you're pregnant, Mrs. Mortimer, you don't smoke. And I said, I'm pregnant and I don't smoke. Went straight back to the office, where in those days everyone smoked in every office. In fact, I'd be saying, you're looking a little nervous, would you like to have a cigarette before I interviewed you? Extraordinary. You called it crashing the ash. There was quite a system to it. And I went back into the office and saw everyone smoking, and I went round stubbing out their cigarettes and throwing their cigarette boxes away. They said, what are you doing? What are you doing? And I said, well, because this is now a no-smoking office. If I have to stop, it must become a no-smoking office. Now, this latest was in 1981, and it only became the law 20 years later that there was no smoking in public places. 20 years. And I have to say that first week, every time I went to the loo, I'd hear someone outside who didn't know I was in the loo talking about me. I was the witch. I was the witch. What does she think? How dare she? Da, 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 da. But, of course, now everyone's given up smoking, and now they could sue me for a lot of money if I allowed or permitted it in the office. So you have to have the self-belief to do things, to run against the crowd sometimes. Just because you thought about it first doesn't mean you're wrong. You might just be a bit ahead of yourself. I didn't see it that way at the time. I felt absolutely surrounded by prickles. But it was obviously the right thing to do and laughable not to, and a few other things along the way. And then people and networking. And that means really looking after people. It means looking out for them. It means looking after them when you're on the way up, because you might meet them on the way down. And I'm very glad to say now I've got people in very high places. One of my consultants, who will remain nameless when I tell you the story, he was not very good at his job. He was just so nice. He didn't want to push people into making good decisions. He would stand back a bit and perhaps be a bit dithery and want to know that side and that side, instead of just saying, just have a go. And I remember saying to him one time, James, don't just do your best, just do it. And I thought, oh, that was a harsh thing to say, but it just had to be said. Well, he's now in the House of Lords, and we love each other to bits, and we've just funded his daughter, who's running a wonderful charity, and helped run a ball, and gone and given a little speech on Saturday night. We are the best of friends, and his wife has now become main board director of one of our huge international global pharmaceutical companies, and we're all best mates. Just because you say things which need saying doesn't mean you can not continue being good friends with people. So looking after people all the way through and staying in touch with people who you know are of very high quality is a great cushion for you when other things might be going wrong. High quality people cushion you against difficulties because you know they'll give you the honest truth rather than just what they think you might want to hear. Go and have a drink. No, don't go and have a drink. Go to the gym, make yourself feel better, face the truth, eat it, bite it, it's true, get on with it. Encouraging. I love it when people make mistakes. And you invariably see a young person say, oh, Angela, I've just done it wrong. Fabulous. I'm so glad, because you're never going to get that bit wrong again. That is just the best learning. That was so wrong, and now I'm never going to have to say it again. And what's more, you never need to worry even about trying to remember it. You're so embarrassed it's gone wrong. Brilliant. That's your way now. And having that attitude of no one ever need to be feeling that they're in an environment of fear, they can just go there and grow safely, is such an important thing to give everyone, because you don't know what someone's level of sensitivity is. They're so busy looking grown up. But underneath every stroke of makeup, every flash of mascara, every beautiful Jimmy Choo shoe, there's someone thinking, oh my gosh, there are so many bad things about me. When's everyone going to find out about it? We all have these vulnerabilities. And so being super sensitive, and particularly when someone's going through hell, they just made a mistake, encouraging them, fabulous. We love it. We love it when we make mistakes. It means you don't do it again. And everyone else saw you do it, so now they won't do it either. You just saved me £500 of sending someone on a course on how not to do something. Marvellous. And then recruitment. If you don't want to go on doing the same job for the whole of your life, you have to find other people to help you do it. And you can't find other people to help you do it over the years, say for 40 years, unless you become completely invulnerable to the idea of taking on someone who's better than you are. If you take on people who have the capacity to be better than you at what you're doing, it means that they will safeguard the values of the company and safeguard the standards of the company whilst you move on to do other things within the company. You're passing on the baton. And how beautifully you pass on the baton, as we know at the Olympic Games, can win or lose a race. So handing it on beautifully at a correct speed and time for the person who you're handing on the responsibility to is incredibly important. And of course, retaining them as well, because if you lose them, that's knowledge out the window. And that's again where running a safe company, where people want to stay because they love it, ensures the safe being of your company and the safe being of your own future career. It means you don't get old and haggard and ragged, age 50, doing the same old job you were doing well when you were 27. So it's the moving forward, which we all need to do in order to grow, and it's giving everyone else the chance to grow through your routing. So this is the list of little side headings I've just been running through, all of which have their roots in Daniel Goleman's message. And when I made out this list, and I did this specially for this occasion, because I knew it was going to be such a diversity of audience. So I just wanted to keep it big. When I made out this list, what I hadn't realized is this was going to happen. That if you just take the first letters of each of those words, you prosper, which is much better than being successful. Because prosper, a bit like imagine, has an inclusiveness about it. It includes your family, it includes you as an individual, as a mother, as a grouping, as a leader of your own staff. Your whole life balance, it indicates all those things. And this is what we try and do out of all these various avenues now, from being a two-person band 40 years ago, having a go at doing it, because I felt I had to. We're now out of these venues, and that's what we try and do for all of you. And I'm now going to hand over the microphone to Seema. To Nita first, isn't it? To Nita, to see if there are some aspects I've covered there which you might like to give your take on. And we're having Q&A at the end.
Wow, Angela, that was incredible. Thank you. And Daniel Goleman's actually a partner at the Yale Institute of Emotional Intelligence, which is one of our partners for Emotional Grit. And so before I get into that, how many of you here are in some sort of leadership position? Leadership of your home, leadership of the community that you serve, leadership of an organization. Like, let's see pretty much everyone in this room, right? Which is why it's standing room only. Okay, so a lot of what Angela talked about essentially is reclaiming what parts that you actually, and let me rephrase this, what parts that we actually struggle with. And for emotional intelligence, and with my background, I was born and raised in Chicago, and my background around understanding what emotional intelligence meant for being an Asian girl growing up as a first-generation Filipino Indian in the Midwest. Well, that meant you had to be within this box and within this framework. And this idea of, well, what is mastering your emotions? What does that actually mean? Why do we need to master our emotions, and how does that actually affect? This sort of vocabulary, from our cultural perspective, didn't even exist. It was, you do things for the sake of your family. You do things to please your family. You do things to gain validation, to gain approval, to gain acceptance. And then what does that do? Then you go into the workforce, and then you do it for your boss. You do it for your colleagues. You do it for the networks that you're in. And so, for those of you who've heard me speak throughout the course of this week, I have a really incredible story of resilience. And that's what, Angela, you spoke about, a lot of resilience. And the company, Global Grit, which I founded a couple years back, I was actually a cosmetic dentist for 7 years, and I'm actually 45 years old. I'm just kidding. So I've had a lot of resilience in my life that has contributed to how I can actually stand before you today and actually share some of this. And I won't go into all of that because you can go on my site, neethebhushan.com. I actually have a book that's coming out because of this process, this emotional grit process that I've been able to share with a lot of the top executives and the leaders in Silicon Valley, the ultimate place for innovation and change progressively throughout the world. And now I'm actually doing the same types of workshops and emotional grit accelerators online and offline in workshops and events throughout the world, and primarily bringing this to this part of the world meaning the Asian culture, because emotional intelligence really isn't in our vocabulary. And we still have a lot of these types of stigmas and dogmas and traditional taboos that really limit us from thinking outside of the box. And so what I actually want to share with all of you before I give the mic to Seema is, can I have everybody stand up? Now sit down. And this is one of the things that I do in our workshop settings with leaders and CEOs. But really, when we're mastering our emotions,